I think we're going to get there, and I think it's really, really good for our civilization if we do. If we have cheap energy, man, that helps. Everything comes back to energy. If you make energy cheaper, you make everything cheaper.
How much is our outdated power grid holding us back?
It's in World War II. It wasn't that we had like a bunch of big defense contractors; it's that we had a bunch of big industrial manufacturers and powers that were able to be shifted to do things for the war.
What is powering all this stuff? Because AI takes a tremendous amount of energy, from what I understand.
So because a lot of those companies initially were just in the cloud, and that was a pretty expensive thing. And Amazon and others and Google and Oracle set up these big giant, things, and it made a ton of money. Like the infrastructure powering the cloud thing, powering things like that apart was become a big business. And now all of a sudden there's a whole new infrastructure, of course, with NVIDIA chips and everything else to build for AI. And this is like it's like $1 trillion investment. And it's one of the biggest investments we've ever made in infrastructure in our civilization to power all this new AI stuff we're doing. And I'm sure you guys on your team are using it for different things. We're each using it for things. We're going to need more power. A lot of us are big fans of nuclear, but right now we don't have a lot of nuclear in our civilization. I think we do have some, by the way. It's 20% of what we do is about that. But a lot of us want to ramp up nuclear. I think this administration is going to do that. But a lot of people want to ramp up solar in different ways. There's a lot of good options for how we do this. But it is a big problem to make sure we do that if we're gonna keep growing this stuff.
Is solar actually a realistic option?
Yeah.
For AI?
So the problem is, it's actually funny. There's this term I like. So a lot of people, the old term is clean energy, of course, because they call it cleaner, which I don't know if solar panels are that clean. It takes a mess to make them, but it's clean in the sense that when you're using them, they're just very clean. There's another term called intermittent energy, and intermittent energy is stuff that's not always on, which is wind and solar. So if you're going to use intermittent energy, first of all, we've probably over-subsidized that, because if you have too much intermittent energy, it just screws you, right? Because it makes energy cheaper when the sun's shining, and then everyone's screwed, and there's not, you have to pay people even more who are running all the time when the sun's not shining. Batteries are getting better, but there are certain like things. For example, with air conditioning, that works really well because you need more energy anyway when it's sunny outside. So listen, I think solar is a big part of the solution, but I think for the base load, I think natural gas and nuclear are the obvious things to scale out for now.
Do you know anybody that's working with cold fusion?
There's a lot of stuff. There's a few different companies. There's one called Commonwealth in Massachusetts that a bunch of my friends are invested in, and it's interesting because fusion is one of those things where for a while, when I was younger, I was just really skeptical because it's always supposed to be coming, and you're like, this is never going to come. It's crazy. But it turns out you can actually map out the ratio of the energy you put in to get out, and you kind of graph that, right? And so if you graph that, it's called like the thing is called the Q ratio or something. If you graph that, it was like 0.2 like 10 years ago. So you only got back a fifth as much energy out, and it kept going up and up and up. And now it's over 1. So fusion's now over 1 in terms of energy coming out. I don't know exactly. It's like 1.2, 1.3. It starts to get really economic around 1.5, 1.6, and really economic at 2. And it looks like if you graph it, it's going to cross. I think it crosses 2 in the early 2030s. I think some of these new designs make that very likely. This is not something that just happens magically. There's a ton of billions of dollars of work. But one thing I will say about America that's awesome is even people I disagree with politically. I have a lot of friends, in the tech world, for example, that might be on the other side. But there's people on both sides, including Bill Gates, including all sorts of other guys, who are putting just a ton of money into this fusion research, these fusion companies. And I think we're going to get there, and I think it's really, really good for our civilization if we do. If we have cheap energy, man, that helps everyone, but it helps the working class more than anyone else, because it just makes everything cheaper. And I think there's a really good chance we get there.
Can you go into a little bit of that? Because I don't think people understand, why cheaper energy would really help the economy in middle class, lower class homes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the cost of everything. Cost of food, the cost of driving your car, the cost of building stuff, the cost of like building a manufacturing plant for things you buy, the cost of running the manufacturing plant. Everything comes back to energy. If you make energy cheaper, you make everything cheaper, and it means all of us can afford more stuff. And by the way, it's not just like if you make energy cheaper, it's also then cheaper to clean the environment. It's cheaper to make things more green, right? So there's all this stuff that just like in our society, like there's just tied to that. And if you look at the standard of living the last couple hundred years for like poor middle class, it's tracked like almost 1-to-1 in a lot of cases, with the cost of energy. It's a really big deal to innovate on that. It's just been this very predictive thing for how well people are doing.
What's the holdback with nuclear energy? What is the...
Well, there's two different holdbacks. The holdback on the fission side, which is what we should be scaling up now, is that we have an insane regulatory apparatus. And so we had this atomic energy group in the US that was very innovative. And we used to do things very quickly in like 50s, 60s, and we built a ton of plants. And then in like the mid 70s, they shifted it and it became what's called the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, as far as I could tell, and all of my friends could tell, had a mandate of just stopping anything new. So if you graph like new nuclear stuff, it was like this and then it flatlines. And these people, like it's just crazy. So basically, like so my father, for his job actually, was at something called Raychem, and he was selling heat tracing. And he would sell heat tracing to different types of industrial plants. And sometimes he would try to sell it to a nuclear plant. And when he had to sell it to a nuclear plant, he had to bring like 60 binders that they had to work on, and all this stuff of just nonsense information. It made it 10 times as expensive for him to sell to nuclear plants. So what these bureaucrats did is they created so many rules and so many laws that made no sense whatsoever. And by the way, all of us want nuclear to be safe, but this was just like way aggressive beyond that. And so it made it unprofitable to do new nuclear plants. And so what happened is starting from the mid 70s, you no longer could innovate on this technology and you only had what you had. And so it really crushed the industry for really almost a couple generations now. And finally, thanks to great work by a lot of people I know, one of my friends who started Airbnb, his wife is a model who's a big nuclear energy promoter. It's really cool. They're just really into this. And I have a bunch of other friends who are pushing nuclear energy. It's finally coming back as a bipartisan thing, that it's cleaner for the environment. It's good for everyone, including the working class. It's good for American business. We should be innovating again in nuclear energy and building it. So it looks like we're going to start fixing the regulations and allowing us to do more things there. I think this new administration, Chris Wright is coming in as Secretary of Energy. He's a very big fan of it. So I'm seeing really good things. So that's going to come back there. That's what's been blocking that. On the fusion side, we just haven't had the technology, but this big investment might get us there the next decade.
And do you think that big oil and gas lobbyists have something to do with it?
It's very possible. It's very possible that part of the reason there's probably like, if you look at Germany, the Green Party in Germany, which is a left party, was basically founded around an anti-nuclear energy framework. So there is like a crazy part of the left that's against nuclear energy, but I bet you on the right, there's some interest from oil and gas that I can't go back in time and see those conversations in the smoke-filled rooms, but I bet you some of those guys, I love Texas, but I bet you some of those guys in Texas, they might have had a thing to say about that. Now today, are they blocking it? No, they're not really anymore. I think we're going to break through and fix it. And most of the guys I know, Chris Wright comes from he created some giant fracking company, Liberty Energy. I think a lot of these guys nowadays are, they have a lot of money, they love the country, they just want the best solutions to win, is what I've seen. I'm sure there's some of them that don't want it, but I think overall the vibe shift we were in, and it's just like, let's do what's best for America. So I think we're going to break through and fix the regulation. I'm hoping.
I mean, a lot of people, me included, are very concerned about our power grid.
Yeah.
And so I would like to kind of hang out on this subject for a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, a lot of people are seeing rolling blackouts.
Yeah.
The power grid structure is extremely outdated. It's old. Doesn't seem like it's getting updated anytime soon. How much is our outdated power grid holding us back?
It's going to become a bigger problem. I agree. It's especially as you go to more electric vehicles where it's distributed and everyone wants to charge, that's going to weigh on these grids. They need to be modernized. The way we've built them right now, Shawn, is the regulation again is a problem here. The incentives are all screwed up. You're only allowed to charge certain amounts or spend certain amounts, and it's very much like one of the areas of our society that's like one of the commie areas of our society. By commie, I mean it's like controlled by top down by government and told what to do. And so, I have two concerns. One is it's not ready to work with what we're going to need, as in terms of future demand the next 5 or 10 years. Two, it's not protected very well at all. So if I was an adversary who wanted to go to war against America or wanted to harass America, probably lots of ways to break in, hack in, just take down these utilities. And it's kind of crazy. Like we spend all this money on defense. We haven't defended any of that stuff at all. I think we just leave it to the local towns. But I'm sorry, these small towns aren't going to know how the heck to defend against the top hackers in China. So there's definitely a lot we could be doing to fix that.
Are you concerned that China manufactures a lot of our energy equipment?
Oh yeah. It's I'm concerned in general that we don't have an advanced manufacturing base that's nearly as big as it needs to be. I think from a geopolitical perspective, it's extremely dangerous. And if we want to be ready, so in World War II, it wasn't that we had like a bunch of big defense contractors, it's that we had a bunch of big industrial manufacturers and powers that were able to be shifted to do things for the war. And if we've basically gotten rid of a lot of that base.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And If you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.